The morning dew glistened on the prairie grass like diamonds scattered across the frontier as Winifred Keller stepped off the stagecoach into the bustling town of Silver Creek, Wyoming Territory, 1876. Her legs trembled, not from the 3-day journey from Boston, but from the uncertainty that lay before her. At 22, she had left behind everything familiar to accept a position as the town's new schoolteacher, a decision that filled her with both excitement and dread. The driver handed down her worn leather trunk and carpet bag. "Welcome to Silver Creek, miss. Town center's just up yonder." Winifred nodded gratefully, brushing dust from her navy traveling dress. Her gaze swept over the main street with its wooden buildings, hitching posts, and people moving with purpose. So different from the cobblestone streets of Boston. "Need help with your bags, madam?" A young boy, no more than 12, appeared at her side. "Yes, thank you. I'm looking for Mrs. Patterson's boarding house." "Just follow me," the boy said, hefting her trunk with surprising strength. "I'm Tommy. You must be the new schoolteacher everyone's talking about." Winifred felt her cheeks warm. Word travels fast. "Not much happens in Silver Creek without everyone knowing," Tommy explained. "Mrs. Patterson's been fixing up your room for days." As they walked, Winifred took in her new home. The general store, the blacksmith shop, a saloon with piano music spilling into the street. Men in dusty clothes and wide-brimmed hats nodded politely as she passed. Mrs. Patterson's boarding house stood at the edge of town, a 2-story white structure with green shutters and a welcoming porch. Before they reached the steps, the door swung open to reveal a plump woman with silver-streaked hair and a warm smile. "You must be Miss Keller. I'm Harriet Patterson. Welcome to Silver Creek." The woman enveloped Winifred in a hug that smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread. "You poor dear, traveling all this way. Come in, come in. I've got tea brewing." Tommy set the trunk down. Mrs. Patterson pressed a penny into his palm. "Thank you, Tommy. Tell your mother I'll be by tomorrow with that remedy for your sister's cough." Inside, the boarding house was neat and comfortable. Mrs. Patterson showed Winifred to a small but pleasant room on the 2nd floor with a window overlooking the town and the vast prairie beyond. "School doesn't start for another week," Mrs. Patterson said. "Gives you time to settle in. Tonight there's a gathering at the Mason farm, a barn dance to celebrate the harvest. Would be a fine way to meet folks." Winifred felt a knot form in her stomach. "Oh, I don't know if I should. Nonsense. Everyone's eager to meet you. The stage only comes through twice a week, and a new face, especially one as pretty as yours, is cause for excitement." After Mrs. Patterson left, Winifred unpacked her belongings, arranging her books on the small shelf by the bed. Her fingers lingered on the spine of her father's Bible. "I'm here, Papa," she whispered. "I'm going to make you proud." After washing away the dust of travel and changing into a simple blue dress, Winifred made her way downstairs. Mrs. Patterson had prepared a light meal, which they shared with the house's only other boarder, a quiet older gentleman who worked at the bank. As dusk approached, the sound of horses and wagons passing by the house grew more frequent. Mrs. Patterson tied her bonnet under her chin. "That'll be folks heading to the Mason place. We should go too." Winifred hesitated. "Perhaps I should rest tonight. The journey was tiring." "You'll have plenty of nights for sitting alone with your books," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "First impressions matter in a small town like this. Besides, there might be some parents of your future students." Unable to argue with such logic, Winifred reluctantly accompanied Mrs. Patterson. They joined a wagon carrying several other townsfolk, and Winifred found herself introduced to so many people that the names became a blur. The Mason farm was ablaze with lantern light. A large barn had been cleared for dancing, hay bales arranged as seating around the perimeter. A fiddler and banjo player provided lively music as couples whirled across the wooden floor. Outside, men gathered around barrels, talking and laughing. Women clustered near tables laden with food, exchanging recipes and gossip. Children darted between the groups, playing games in the gathering darkness. Mrs. Patterson led Winifred around, making introductions. Everyone was polite, but Winifred felt overwhelmed by the attention. When Mrs. Patterson was drawn into a conversation about the church social, Winifred seized the opportunity to step away. She found a quiet spot near the barn's entrance, watching the dancers. The music was infectious, the laughter genuine. In Boston, she had attended formal balls with her aunt, but this was different, more joyful, less constrained by rigid social rules. First time at a barn dance, the deep voice startled her. Winifred turned to find a tall man leaning against the barn wall. His face was partially shadowed by his hat, but she could see the glint of his eyes. "Is it that obvious?" she asked. He chuckled. "You look like you're studying for an exam. Force of habit, I'm the new schoolteacher." He pushed his hat back, revealing a strong-jawed face bronzed by the sun. His eyes were a striking blue like the summer sky over the prairie. "Ah, the Boston lady, I heard you were arriving today. And you are Forrest Flynn. I run the Flynn Ranch about 5 miles outside town." He offered his hand. "Welcome to Silver Creek, Miss Keller, Winifred Keller." His hand was warm and calloused, engulfing hers completely. "Miss Keller." He released her hand but maintained his gaze. "Not joining the dancing. I'm just observing for now," she replied, feeling her cheeks warm under his scrutiny. "Sometimes the best way to learn is by doing," he said with a half-smile that brought unexpected butterflies to her stomach. Before she could respond, they were interrupted by a boisterous group of cowboys. "Flynn, stop hiding and come join the game. We need a fourth for cards." Forrest nodded to his friends but returned his attention to Winifred. "Duty calls, but I hope you'll save a dance for me later, Miss Keller." As he walked away, Winifred found herself watching his tall figure disappear into the crowd. She hadn't expected to feel such an immediate connection to anyone in this new place. The evening progressed, and Winifred gradually relaxed. She spoke with several mothers about their children and met the chairman of the school board, who seemed pleased with her credentials. Still, she remained on the periphery, not quite ready to join the circles of conversation or dancing that formed and dissolved throughout the barn. Later, as the music slowed for a waltz, Winifred saw Forrest Flynn making his way toward her. Her heart quickened. "I believe you owe me a dance, Miss Keller," he said. "I don't recall making such a promise, Mr. Flynn." His eyes crinkled with amusement. "Then consider it a proper welcome to Silver Creek." Before she could formulate a polite refusal, Mrs. Patterson appeared at her elbow. "Go on, dear Mr. Flynn is one of our most respected ranchers, and a fine dancer, they say." With gentle encouragement from Mrs. Patterson and Forrest's hand extended expectantly, Winifred found herself being led onto the dance floor. His hand settled at her waist, maintaining a respectful distance as they began to move with the music. "You dance well for a cowboy," she observed, surprised by his grace. "And you dance well for someone who was too shy to join the circle," he countered with a smile. They moved in harmony, and Winifred gradually relaxed in his hold. "How long have you lived in Silver Creek, Mr. Flynn?" "All my life. My father established the ranch after the war. I took over 5 years ago when he passed. I'm sorry about your father. He lived a good life." Forrest guided her through a turn. "What brings a Boston lady to Wyoming Territory?" The position was advertised in a teacher's journal. "After my father died last year, there wasn't much keeping me in Boston. Bold move, coming all this way alone." "Sometimes change is necessary, even when it's frightening." His eyes held hers. "Courage isn't about not being afraid, Miss Keller. It's about facing your fears anyway." The music ended too soon. Forrest escorted her back to the edge of the dance floor, where a group had gathered for refreshments. As they approached, a woman with elaborately curled blonde hair looked up. "Forrest Flynn, I've been looking for you everywhere," she said, her tone sweet but her eyes sharp as they assessed Winifred. "Hello, Vivian," Forrest replied. "Have you met Miss Keller? She's our new schoolteacher." Vivian's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How lovely, I'm Vivian Russell. My father owns the bank." She tucked her hand possessively into the crook of Forrest's arm. "Forrest, you promised to speak with Daddy about that loan for the new well." Forrest glanced apologetically at Winifred. "Excuse me, Miss Keller, business calls." As they walked away, Winifred noticed how Vivian pressed close to Forrest's side. She felt a twinge of something that might have been disappointment. "Don't mind Vivian," said a friendly voice. A young woman with auburn hair offered Winifred a cup of punch. "I'm Clara, the seamstress. Vivian's been trying to get Forrest Flynn to propose for years." "Are they courting?" Winifred asked, trying to sound merely curious. Clara laughed. Not according to Forrest, but Vivian and her father have plans. She lowered her voice. The Flynns have the best cattle ranch in the territory, but they've had some hard years with the drought. The Russell Bank holds their loan. The rest of the evening passed pleasantly enough, but Winifred didn't dance again. Forrest remained engaged in conversation with Mr. Russell and several other men, though she occasionally caught him glancing in her direction. By the time they returned to the boarding house, Winifred was exhausted but filled with impressions of her new community and one particular rancher with sky-blue eyes. The following days were filled with preparations for the school term. Winifred spent hours in the one-room schoolhouse, organizing books, cleaning desks, and planning lessons for students ranging from 6 to 16 years old. On Wednesday afternoon, as she struggled to reach a high shelf, the schoolhouse door opened. Forrest Flynn stood in the doorway, hat in hand. "Miss Keller," he said with a nod. "Mrs. Patterson mentioned you might need some help getting the schoolhouse ready." Winifred nearly dropped the book she was holding. "Mr. Flynn, that's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose." "No imposition." He stepped inside, his tall frame somehow making the schoolhouse seem smaller. "What needs doing?" She hesitated only briefly before indicating the upper shelves. "I can't quite reach the top shelves to clean them." With a nod, he rolled up his sleeves and set to work. Winifred tried not to stare at the play of muscles in his forearms as he easily reached places that had frustrated her all morning. "I meant to ask you at the dance," he said as he worked, "how you're finding Silver Creek so far." "Everyone has been very welcoming," she replied. "It's quite different from Boston, but in good ways. Must be quite an adjustment. No theaters or fancy restaurants. But beautiful landscapes and friendly people." She paused. "Although I admit I do miss libraries." He climbed down from the chair he'd been standing on. "I might be able to help with that." Winifred raised an eyebrow. "You have a secret library, Mr. Flynn." He laughed, a rich sound that filled the small room. "Not exactly, but I do have books. My father was an educated man who believed in the value of reading. We have quite a collection at the ranch." "Really? What sort of books?" "History, philosophy, some literature." "You're welcome to borrow anything that interests you." The offer touched her deeply. "That's very generous. Consider it a selfish act. It's been too long since I've had a good discussion about books." They spent the next hour working side by side, cleaning and organizing. Forrest moved desks effortlessly and fixed a broken window latch. Winifred found him surprisingly easy to talk to, knowledgeable about many subjects and genuinely interested in her opinions. When the work was done, they stood in the doorway, surveying their efforts. The afternoon sun was beginning to slant through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. "Thank you, Mr. Flynn. This would have taken me days on my own." "Forrest," he said, "out here we're not much for formalities among friends. Then you must call me Winifred." The words felt bold on her tongue, a smile spread across his face. "Winifred." He seemed to test the name. "Would you allow me to show you some of Silver Creek's surroundings? Sunday after church, perhaps? The view from Eagle Ridge is something everyone should see at least once." The invitation caught her by surprise. "Aye, that would be lovely. I'll bring some books," he added with a grin. "And a picnic lunch." As he rode away, Winifred found herself smiling, anticipation building for Sunday. School began the following Monday. 27 students of varying ages filed into the schoolhouse, eyeing their new teacher with curiosity. Winifred had dressed carefully in her most professional attire, a high-necked blouse and dark skirt, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Good morning," she said, hiding her nervousness behind a smile. "I'm Miss Keller, and I'm very excited to be your teacher." The morning went smoothly as Winifred assessed each student's level and organized them into groups. The older children helped the younger ones, a system that worked well in one-room schoolhouses across the country. At midday, as the children ate their packed lunches in the schoolyard, Winifred noticed a familiar figure approaching on horseback. Forrest dismounted gracefully and walked toward her, carrying a small package. "Miss Keller," he greeted her formally, aware of the curious eyes watching them. "I thought you might enjoy these for your classroom." He handed her the package, which contained several well-preserved maps and a beautiful illustrated book about native plants of the region. "These are wonderful," she said sincerely. "The students will love them. Glad to help." His eyes held hers a moment longer than necessary. "How's your first day going?" "Very well, thank you." A small girl tugged at Winifred's skirt. "Miss Keller, is this your beau?" Winifred felt her face flame. "No, Lucy, this is Mr. Flynn. He's a friend who brought us some maps for our geography lessons." Forrest knelt to the child's level. "And who might you be, Miss?" "Lucy Taylor. My pa runs the general store." "Well, Miss Taylor, it's a pleasure to meet you. Are you enjoying your first day of school?" Lucy nodded enthusiastically. "Miss Keller reads real nice, better than my ma." Forrest laughed and stood. "I'm not surprised." "Miss Keller is a very educated lady." The school bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. As the children hurried inside, Forrest tipped his hat to Winifred. "I'll leave you to your teaching. Looking forward to Sunday." That evening at the boarding house, Mrs. Patterson was full of questions. "I heard Forrest Flynn paid a visit to the school today. Brought some books, they say." Winifred kept her tone casual. "Maps, actually, and a book about local plants, very educational." Mrs. Patterson's eyes twinkled. "Hum. And I suppose his invitation to take you riding on Sunday is also educational. News travels fast," Winifred observed dryly. "Tommy Taylor's mother was in my kitchen not an hour after school let out," Mrs. Patterson admitted. "Folks are curious about you, dear." "And Forrest Flynn hasn't shown interest in a woman since he returned from that cattle drive to Kansas City 2 years ago." Winifred focused on her plate. "We're just friends. He's been kind to a newcomer, that's all." "Of course," Mrs. Patterson said, not sounding convinced at all. "Just be careful. Vivian Russell has had her eye on Forrest for years, and her father isn't a man to cross." Sunday dawned clear and cool. Winifred dressed in her riding skirt and jacket, practical clothing she'd purchased in preparation for life in the West. After church service, where she noticed Vivian Russell watching her with narrowed eyes, Forrest met her outside with 2 horses. "This is Daisy," he said, indicating a gentle-looking mare. "She's steady and patient, perfect for a beginner." "Who says I'm a beginner?" Winifred challenged, though in truth she'd only ridden a few times at her cousin's country estate. Forrest's eyes danced with amusement. "Just a guess." He helped her mount, his hands strong and sure at her waist. They rode at an easy pace out of town, following a trail that wound through rolling grasslands toward distant hills. "The ranch is that way," Forrest said, pointing to the northwest. "About 5 miles, 2,000 acres, most of it grazing land." "It sounds enormous." "Out here, land is what you make of it. My father started with just 50 head of cattle. Now we run over 500. You must be proud of what he built." Forrest nodded. "I am, though these last few years haven't been easy. Drought, harsh winters. Ranching is always a gamble." They rode in comfortable silence, the rhythm of the horses' hooves a soothing backdrop. Winifred found herself relaxing, enjoying the vastness of the landscape and Forrest's quiet company. The trail began to climb, winding through stands of pine trees. Finally, they emerged onto a flat outcropping of rock. Forrest dismounted and helped Winifred down, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "Eagle Ridge," he announced. "Best view in the territory." Winifred gasped as she took in the panorama. Miles of prairie stretched before them, the land rolling away toward distant mountains. A river snaked through the valley, glinting silver in the sunlight. "It's magnificent," she breathed. "Worth the ride?" She turned to find him watching her, his expression soft. "Absolutely." They spread a blanket on a grassy spot and unpacked the lunch Forrest had brought: fried chicken, biscuits, apples, and a jar of honey. As promised, he'd also brought books: a volume of Thoreau, a history of the territory, and a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice. "My mother's favorite," he explained, handling the novel with care. "She read it aloud to us during winter evenings. Us, my brother and me. He's in Colorado now, running a freight business." They ate and talked, discovering shared interests and viewpoints. Forrest was well-read and thoughtful, challenging her assumptions about cowboys in the best possible way. "Why did you become a teacher?" he asked as they watched a hawk circle lazily overhead. "I've always loved learning. My father was a professor of history at a small college." Our home was filled with books and ideas. She smiled at the memory. When he died, teaching seemed the natural path, a way to honor him and support myself. He would be proud, Forrest said simply. What about you? Did you always want to be a rancher? He considered the question. I tried other things. Spent 2 years at a university in St. Louis, even worked as a surveyor for the railroad, but the land calls you back. It gets in your blood. As the afternoon waned, they reluctantly packed up. The ride back to town was filled with comfortable conversation, punctuated by companionable silences. At the edge of town, Forrest slowed his horse. Winifred, he said, his voice serious. I've enjoyed today more than I can say. Would you allow me to call on you properly? Perhaps dinner at the hotel restaurant Friday evening, her heart lifted. I would like that very much. His smile was like sunrise breaking across the prairie. Good, that's good. They rode into town side by side, unaware of the gossip their return would generate or of the cold eyes watching from the window of the Russell home. The following weeks established a pattern. Winifred taught during the day, often staying late to help struggling students. Forrest called on her regularly, sometimes bringing books, other times just walking with her through town in the evening. They attended church socials together and shared meals at the hotel restaurant. Winifred found herself falling for the thoughtful rancher with unexpected speed. He was everything she admired: intelligent, kind, hardworking, with a quiet strength that made her feel both protected and respected. One evening in late October, as they walked back to the boarding house after a community harvest dinner, Forrest took her hand. There's a dance in Copper Springs next Saturday. Would you accompany me? Copper Springs. Isn't that nearly 20 miles away? It is. We'd leave early, stay overnight, separate rooms at the hotel, of course, he added quickly. Return Sunday afternoon. Mrs. Patterson has already agreed to chaperone. Winifred laughed. You've thought of everything? I try to. His expression grew serious. Winifred, I want to do this properly. You're important to me. The sincerity in his eyes made her breath catch. You're important to me too, Forrest. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Then you'll come? Yes, she whispered. That night she could hardly sleep, her mind filled with thoughts of Forrest and the growing feelings between them. The next day after school, Winifred was preparing to leave when the door opened. Expecting Forrest, she turned with a smile that quickly faded when she saw Vivian Russell standing there. Miss Russell, she said, surprised. May I help you? Vivian closed the door behind her. She wore an expensive dress of burgundy silk, her blonde hair elaborately styled. I think it's time we had a conversation, teacher to teacher. I wasn't aware you were a teacher. I teach people what they need to know. Vivian's smile was cold. Like the fact that Forrest Flynn is practically engaged to me, Winifred's heart stuttered. I believe that's for Mr. Flynn to say. Men say lots of things, but contracts and debts speak louder. Vivian smoothed her skirt. My father holds the mortgage on the Flynn ranch. One word from me and Forrest could lose everything his family built. Are you threatening him or me? I'm stating facts. The Flynn ranch has been struggling. The drought hit them hard. My father has been generous with extensions, but his patience isn't endless. Winifred's mind raced. Forrest had mentioned financial challenges, but not the extent of them. What exactly do you want from me, Miss Russell? Stop seeing him. Go back to Boston or wherever you came from. Vivian moved closer. You don't belong here, Miss Keller. You're a curiosity, a novelty. But Forrest needs a woman who understands this territory, who can help secure his future, not some Eastern bookworm playing at frontier life. The words struck home, touching Winifred's deepest insecurities. Was Vivian right? Was she just a temporary distraction for Forrest? I think you should leave, Winifred said, proud that her voice remained steady. Vivian shrugged elegantly. Think about what I've said, about what's best for Forrest in the long run. She paused at the door. Oh, and that dance in Copper Springs, I'll be there too. My father has business with the bank owner there. Isn't that a coincidence? After Vivian left, Winifred sat at her desk, trembling slightly. She'd known about Vivian's interest in Forrest, but not about the financial leverage the Russells held over him. Could she be putting his livelihood at risk? That evening, she pleaded a headache when Forrest came to call. The next day, she sent a note to the ranch saying she couldn't attend the dance after all, citing school preparations. For the rest of the week, she avoided him, making excuses when he tried to see her. It hurt more than she could have imagined, but Vivian's words echoed in her mind. What if she was right? What if Winifred was jeopardizing Forrest's future? Saturday morning found her at the schoolhouse, trying to lose herself in work. The sound of boots on the wooden floor made her look up. Forrest stood in the doorway, his expression a mixture of confusion and determination. "Winifred," he said quietly, "have I done something wrong?" "No," she replied, unable to meet his eyes. "I've just been busy." "Too busy to explain why you suddenly can't attend the dance." "Too busy for a simple conversation." He moved closer. "Please tell me what's happened." She stared at the papers on her desk. "Perhaps we've been rushing things. We come from different worlds, Forrest. That's never bothered you before." He studied her face. "Something's changed." Or someone said something. Winifred's silence confirmed his suspicion. "Vivian," he guessed, his voice hardening. "What did she tell you?" "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." He gently turned her face toward him. "Winifred, please." The concern in his eyes broke her resolve. "She said you're practically engaged, that her father holds your mortgage and could foreclose if she asked him to." Understanding dawned on his face, followed by anger. "And you believed her?" "I don't know what to believe," Winifred admitted. She seemed very confident. Forrest ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "The Russells do hold our loan, and yes, the ranch has had some difficult years, but there is no understanding between Vivian and me. There never has been. She seems to think otherwise. Vivian sees what she wants to see." He took Winifred's hands in his. "Listen to me. Last month, I drove a herd to Cheyenne and got top dollar. The money's been deposited in a bank there, not with Russell. I'm meeting with a representative from a Denver bank next week to refinance the entire loan." Hope flickered in Winifred's chest. "You never mentioned this. Because it wasn't your burden to carry. I wanted to have everything settled before." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, "before asking you certain questions about our future." Her heart raced at the implication. "Forrest." "I had it all planned," he continued. "The dance, a dinner afterward, a moonlight walk where I would tell you that I've fallen in love with you." Winifred's breath caught. "You love me." His hands tightened on hers. "More than I thought possible. From that first dance, when you were too shy to join the circle, I knew there was something special about you. Your intelligence, your courage in coming west alone, your kindness with the children, everything about you calls to me." Tears welled in her eyes. "I've been such a fool." "No," he said gently. "You were concerned about my welfare. That only makes me love you more." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "I was going to wait, but I think now is the right time." He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring with a small pearl. "This was my mother's. I'd be honored if you would wear it as a promise of my intentions." "Forrest," she whispered, overwhelmed. "Are you certain? What about the ranch, your future?" "You are my future, Winifred. The ranch is important, yes. It's my heritage, my responsibility. But without someone to share it with, what's the point of all that work?" His blue eyes held hers intently. "I love you. Will you consider becoming my wife?" Joy bubbled up inside her. "I love you too, and yes, I will consider it very favorably." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he drew her into his arms and kissed her for the first time, a gentle, questioning kiss that deepened as she responded. When they finally parted, both breathless, Forrest rested his forehead against hers. "Now about that dance in Copper Springs." "I would love to go," she said, "though I believe Vivian will be there." His eyes gleamed with mischief. "Even better, we can announce our engagement." The dance in Copper Springs marked the beginning of their official courtship. True to his word, Forrest refinanced the ranch loan with the Denver bank, freeing himself from the Russells' influence. Vivian eventually turned her attention to a visiting cattle buyer from Chicago, and life in Silver Creek settled into a pleasant rhythm. Winifred flourished as the town's teacher, earning the respect of parents and the adoration of her students. She began adult literacy classes in the evenings and helped establish Silver Creek's first proper library. They married the following spring in a ceremony attended by the entire town. Mrs. Patterson cried happy tears as she helped Winifred prepare, and even Vivian sent a polite note of congratulation. After a brief honeymoon in Denver, they returned to the Flynn Ranch, where Forrest had expanded and renovated the main house. A room filled with bookshelves awaited Winifred's collection, and a smaller building nearby would serve as a school for the ranch children and those from neighboring homesteads. On their first evening home, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of gold and purple. Forrest's arm was warm around her shoulders, his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek. "Happy?" he asked softly. Winifred looked up at the man who had seen her true self from the beginning, who had drawn her out of her shell and into a life more fulfilling than she could have imagined. "Completely," she answered, and knew it was true. In this vast, wild country, she had found not only love but also her place in the world beside a man who valued her mind as much as her heart, who saw her hesitation to join the circle not as weakness but as an opportunity to extend his hand. And as the stars began to appear in the deepening twilight, Winifred realized that the shy Boston schoolteacher was gone. In her place stood a woman who had found the courage to embrace life's dance, with a partner who would always ensure she belonged exactly where she was beside him.